The dry wind swept through the dusty streets of Bitter Creek, Wyoming, carrying with the cries of two tiny infants bundled in an old basket on the courthouse steps. The townsfolk had gathered for the weekly auction, usually horses, cattle, sometimes tools or household goods left behind by the dead or the broke. But no one expected a man from the circuit court to drag out a basket, clear his throat, and declare, "Twin babies, boy and girl, found abandoned at the Red Mesa settlement. Their ma past birthing him. No known kin." The crowd stiffened. Eyes darted around, wary, unsure. "Who'll take him?" the man called. "They got no diseases. Parish will provide a month's flour ration and cow's milk for the first week." Murmurs. A man in a brimmed hat muttered, "More mouths to feed." A woman with 6 of her own pulled her shawl tighter and stepped back. No one moved forward. Until she did. Chapter 2. The Bride with Empty Arms. Caroline Hayes stood at the edge of the crowd, her traveling dress still covered in trail dust from the journey west. Her husband-to-be, Ethan Riggs, hadn't even met her stagecoach. She'd come on a mail-order promise, a contract sealed with exchanged letters and hope. But she wasn't here for him. Not in that moment. The moment she heard those babies cry, something in her broke. Or maybe healed. She stepped forward, voice trembling but sure. "I'll raise them." Heads turned. The bailiff blinked. "You'll take both." "I will," she said, her voice firmer now. "They deserve more than silence and stays." Someone scoffed. "You ain't even married, miss." "I will be. Today. And I don't need anyone's permission to love children." A ripple of stunned whispers passed through the crowd. And that's when Ethan Riggs finally showed up, 6 foot of sunburned cowboy, late as always, with a rifle over his back and confusion in his eyes. Chapter 3. Love Isn't Always a Spark. Ethan had expected a shy, proper bride who'd keep the house and speak little. Caroline was not that woman. She handed him one of the babies before he could say a word. "This is your son now," she said. He stared down into the boy's wide, stormy eyes and opened his mouth to protest, but didn't. He saw the softness in Caroline's eyes, and the fierceness, and maybe, in that confusing moment, he saw something he hadn't known he'd wanted, a family. They married under the dry church bell, with the twins swaddled in blankets and the preacher reading from a weather-stained Bible. No celebration, no cake, just a quiet understanding of two souls too tired to pretend they didn't need each other. Chapter 4. Bitter Creek Whispers. Life on the Riggs homestead was hard. Ethan's cattle were thin, the barn roof leaked, and the well ran dry every few weeks. Caroline spent her days boiling linens, hauling water, and feeding 2 squalling infants who never seemed to sleep at the same time. The townsfolk whispered, "Ethan married a barren woman just to shut his ma up. She's trying to prove something. Those ain't even her kin." But Caroline didn't flinch. She held those babies tighter, sang them to sleep, and smiled at the gossip. Still, nights were quiet. Too quiet. She and Ethan slept apart. They barely spoke unless it was about chores or formula. There were no gentle touches, no shared laughs over coffee. Just duty. Until the storm came. Chapter 5. The Fire and the Reckoning. Lightning split the sky and set the west field ablaze. Ethan rode out to douse the flames, but the wind turned, fast and mean, driving sparks straight toward the house. Caroline gathered the babies, wrapped them tight, and fled barefoot through the backfields, her lungs burning, her eyes tearing. By the time Ethan found her in the rain, she was collapsed in the mud, the twins safe in her arms, soaked and shivering, but alive. He dismounted and scooped her up, his jaw clenched with guilt. "I didn't know," he whispered, holding her tight. "You never asked," she rasped. That night, for the first time, he kissed her, not out of gratitude or obligation, but because he couldn't bear not to. Chapter 6. A Man Can Change. Ethan Riggs started waking up early. fixing the barn roof, hauling water so Caroline wouldn't have to. He learned how to mix formula, how to rock a baby through teething, how to smile again. And he talked. He told Caroline about his ma dying young, about his pa drinking himself to death, about how the silence of his home had always felt safer than love. Caroline shared her scars too, how 3 doctors back east said she'd never bear a child, how her fiancé had left her once he found out, how she came west not to find a husband, but to find purpose. They didn't fall in love in a day, but they built it, brick by brick, sleepless night by sleepless night. Chapter 7. The Outlaw Returns. Just as life began to settle, danger rode into Bitter Creek. A man with a black hat and a bloodstained grin. Wade Ellis, an outlaw Ethan once rode with, years ago before he turned clean. Wade remembered Ethan's shooting arm. And his debts. "You owe me, Cowboy," Wade said, sliding a knife across the saloon table. "One job, one train. Then you can keep playing house." Ethan said no. Wade didn't like no. 2 days later, the barn was burned to cinders, and a note was nailed to the porch. Last chance. Or the baby's next. Chapter 8. To fight for love. Caroline begged him not to go. But Ethan knew he couldn't wait for Wade to strike again. He kissed his wife, kissed the babies, then rode out under a full moon, rifle strapped and fury burning. He found Wade camped near the canyon, counting stolen gold. "I ain't yours no more," Ethan said. Wade laughed. "Then die like the fool you are." But Wade never saw the second rifle. Caroline stood from behind a boulder, cocked the gun with steady hands, and fired. Wade dropped. Just like that. Chapter 9. The Home They Built. Ethan and Caroline buried Wade by the canyon and never spoke of him again. They rebuilt the barn with help from neighbors who finally saw the truth. Caroline wasn't just some barren bride. She was mother forged by fire, a woman of iron and love. The twins, named Lily and Bo, grew strong and bright. And Ethan? He grew gentler, kinder, the man he was always meant to be. On their 3rd anniversary, Caroline gave him a gift, a carved wooden frame with a simple drawing inside, a family of 4, hand in hand, beneath a rising sun. Ethan wept, because love, he'd learned, wasn't something you found. It was something you chose.